of being David in an industry of Goliaths. And what I really want to talk about today is how smaller companies can compete against larger competitors in a marketplace. And I want to use Theorem Clinical Research, my employer, and the CRO industry as an example or a backdrop for the presentation. So a little bit about Theorem so you can get a sense of where we sit in the industry. We're considered a global mid-size CRO. So the definition of mid-size in the CRO space is global. We're in about 27 countries around the world. If you want to be considered mid-size and global, you probably got to be in at least 20 out there. From a revenue standpoint, mid-size is about $100 million to about $250 million of size. That's considered mid-size today. From a strategic standpoint, Theorem has three legs of the stool. We have your traditional pharmaceutical trials, we have a medical device trial business unit, and we do clinical analytics, which is basically biostatistics and data management. We'll do all that work on a standalone basis, along with doing the work on our pharmaceutical and medical device trials. The history of Theorem is we were actually called Omnicare Clinical Research up until about 3 years ago. So we were a giant. We were part of a Fortune 500 organization at $6 billion of revenue, and we had a lot of resources. But at the time, Omnicare's core business was specialty pharmacies and long-term care facilities. That grew to about $6 billion. Theorem at the time was about roughly a shade below $200 million. So you can imagine the struggle to get resources within a company where the main core of the business is $6 billion. Omnicare's management decided it made sense to spin off the CRO, Omnicare Clinical Research. I joined the organization in 2010 and was brought on with the mission of helping spin off this business, which we did in April of 2011. So go over the mission real quick and the vision real quick because it will come into play a little bit later in the presentation. So our mission is to provide precise execution of complex combination trials for the pharma, device, and diagnostics industries to accelerate the delivery of personalized medicine to patients around the world. So the complex combination in biopharmaceutical and device trials is something I'll get into, so file that back as we talk about our strategy as we go forward in this presentation. And then our vision is to be the CRO of choice for those complex combination trials through innovative, flexible solutions, expert scientific and regulatory guidance, rapid access to data. I'll talk about that a little bit later on in the presentation as well. I want to give an overview of the CRO industry in general to give you a better sense of where it sits today. So from our friends at William Blair, they've shown that the in-house R&D projections from 2008 to 2020, those blue bars, that's the amount of development spend that will occur in pharmaceutical companies from 2008 to 2020. You can see it's pretty much flat from beginning to end. We've seen a little bit of a dip here in 2011, 12, 13, expected to ramp up. The next piece of the puzzle, the teal or the light blue, that's the amount of money that goes to investigators. Those are the doctors at the clinical trial sites who are administering the drugs to the patients. So that is not performed by the pharma companies in most cases, and that's not performed by the CROs. The CROs do not employ the investigators. We will pay the investigators on behalf of the pharmaceutical companies, but it's pass-through revenue and pass-through expense for us. So they are their own slice of the industry. They're usually called site organizations. The last piece is the R&D being performed by clinical research organizations on behalf of the pharmaceutical companies. You can see it's pretty much growing very rapidly here from 2008 to 2020. You're all seeing this probably in your organizations today. We saw a few presentations about increasing productivity. A lot of times that's been going hand in hand with outsourcing to the CROs. You're moving out your fixed costs and making them variable by outsourcing a large portion of your trials to the CROs. And on top of this, I didn't really realize this. I thought this was interesting because everyone here is talking about growing. But clinical development, the CAGR is only expected to be 2.9% from 2008 to 2020. I don't think anybody in this room has a revenue target of growing at 2.9%. So it really goes with the theme of trying to do more with less in our industry. I want to isolate this portion which is going to the CROs. You can see 2008 to 2020, it looks a lot bigger now when you put it on a different scale. But the amount going to the CROs is going to grow at an 8% CAGR according to projections. So it's a growth industry. Being in the CRO space is definitely a growth industry, and that's why we're seeing a lot of money go into the space in recent years. The reason why it's growing, you're outsourcing more. The penetration of all the work that's being done by CROs in the development space is expected to go from the low 20% range to 44% by 2020. So it's really dramatic growth. As this has gone on, strategic partnerships have really become in vogue. You can see a lot of large pharma is partnering with a lot of the large CROs. You see the names up there on the board: Quintiles, Covance, PRA, Icon, PPD. They're all CROs that are $1 billion in plus revenue, and they all go out to market today and basically sell themselves on having scale, having people in 60 countries or 50 countries around the world to perform your large trials. And they're partnering up with large pharma: Merck, BMS, Bayer, Amgen, Pfizer, worldwide partnerships. So today in the industry, it's presumed that CROs have to be big, global, and offer a broad range of services to partner with large pharma. The CRO industry has changed a lot since 2008. The way this chart reads, on the left-hand side is the revenue size of CROs, and the bottom is the number of CROs that we had in each of those buckets back in 2008. We had one company, Quintiles, which was greater than $2.5 billion. We had 3 which were $1 billion plus, 5 which was $500,000 to $1 billion, and probably in 2008, that's what you would consider a mid-sized CRO, about $500 million to $1 billion. 1 at $250 to $500 million, and 6 at $100 million to $250 million where Theorem plays today. It's changed a lot in the last 5 years. Still have Quintiles at greater than $2.5 billion. This area has doubled. The number of CROs greater than $1 billion has increased from 4 to 7. The mid-size area is pretty much gone. We've only got one CRO sitting between $250 million and $1 billion. That's INC Research. And then the $100 to $250 million has dropped from 5 to 6. That changes almost daily because we've had 2 CROs sitting in that place get acquired in just the last 6 months: Active Solutions and Novella Clinical. So what else has changed in the names? 2008, these are the top 15 CROs by revenue. Well, since then, 5 of them have been acquired. So 1/3 of the top CROs by revenue have been acquired in this industry. So we've got a reshuffling of the deck. INC Research, they acquired MDS. INC Research also acquired Kendall, so they gobbled up 2 of the businesses there to get themselves above that $500 million threshold. Inventive acquired PharmaNet and i3, and PRA recently acquired RPS. When I originally did this presentation a month ago as I was planning, Active Solution was on this schedule. They got gobbled up. They're now acquired by Icon. So we've seen a lot of change here. How's the market share breakdown? Today, the $1 billion plus CROs own 50% of the market. So they are providing 53% of all the services that clinical research organizations are providing today. The mid-tier, the new mid-tier, the $100 million to $200 million, or the $100 million to $1 billion, they're performing 7% of the market. That leaves 40% of the market is really fragmented, being done by CROs at less than $100 million. It's still a pretty big market. Even though the large CROs have 53% market share, there's 40% of opportunity that's growing at an 8% clip. So the smaller or mid-sized CROs, they still have a lot of opportunity to execute their business plans and continue to grow greater than the market. Now, I decided to take a look at a lot of the articles that I get. I get outsourcing pharma emailed to me every day, so I get to see the headlines, and it's quite interesting. You know, pharma consolidation is a boon to CROs, but only the larger ones, report says. This was an interesting one. Quintiles says size matters. Imagine that, the largest player in the marketplace. Big or small, CROs need clout to survive. Top-heavy market makes times tough for mid-sized CROs. Mid-tier CROs face pressure, staying independent as consolidation wave intensifies, the bankers say. So clearly, the market perception is big as a requirement. So what do you do? So I work for a company that's in that $100 to $250 million threshold. So you sit back and take a look at our options. Just liquidate and exit the market. Maybe it doesn't make sense to survive anymore. Accept defeat and just sell to a larger CRO. Merge with another mid-sized CRO and try to get ourselves up on that ladder. If we did that, maybe we'd get to $300 million of revenue. That doesn't get us to that $1 billion threshold competing for the large pharma deals. Differentiate, execute, and steal share. So that's clearly the option that we've taken. It's the one I like because I still get a paycheck in that option. There's still a large market opportunity to serve. And large CROs, quite frankly, they're not the correct solution for all trials and sponsors today. The market's changed. This used to be a very transaction-based industry. And there was much more competition as we saw in 2008. It's moved from transaction-based to try to win trials on a standalone basis to the strategic deals where you're getting $100 million deals, $200 million deals. So what's the path forward for Theorem? We sat back in 2011 after the business was spun out from Omnicare and really had to sit down and think about what are we going to do with this business on a go-forward basis. We've gotten away from the mothership. We're now able to put investment in our business and really adapt to the changing industry. I think the first piece of it was we needed to make size an advantage. Once you go into the game thinking, oh, we're too small and feeling sorry for yourself, you've already lost. Every company that's in this room right now is represented. At one point in time, you were a smaller organization. You didn't just get born and be a billion-dollar company. So you had to think differently at some point in time, and you had to use your flexibility, your strategy, or come at it a different way in order to grow. Second is differentiate. We clearly cannot go to a bid defense at a sponsor company, compete against Quintiles and Icon. They walk out of the room and say, we've got 28,000 employees around the world in 60 countries. We walk in and say, hey, we've got 1,200 in 27 countries, but we're more flexible just because we're smaller. That's not a win strategy. So we need to differentiate ourselves from a services standpoint and also from a market perception standpoint, which is really important. Make tough decisions. We don't have the ability to stick with strategic decisions that we may have made and continue throwing good money after bad. So I'm going to give you an example of how we had to make tough decisions to push the organization forward. Talent development and acquisition. It's still really hard to get good people. And in a marketplace that services and your people are your greatest asset, and you see how the industry is growing, we're all fighting for the same skill sets out there. So we really need to do a little bit of a different job and try to do some talent development and acquire our skill sets. And lastly, with all service companies, you have to provide exceptional service. If you're not providing exceptional service, there's no reason to be in business at that point in time. So I'll go through each one. I'm going to go through and talk about our biopharmaceutical business unit and how we decided to make size an advantage and how we use it strategically inside the company. When we look at our pipeline for sales for trials that we have an opportunity to win, we classify them in 5 buckets on a daily basis. $0 to $500,000, $500,000 to $2.5, $2.5 to $5, $5 million to $10, and $10 million plus. We realized that the sweet spot for us, the perfect size trials for Theorem scale, is that $500,000 to $10 million range. Doesn't mean we can't run a $10 million plus trial. We're running 2 $30 million programs today with clients that know us. Doesn't mean we can't run anything from $0 to $500,000. We still do that. But there's challenges when you get there. When we play in that $0 to $500,000 space, we bump up against regional CRO competition. So those are the players beneath the $100 million range. You'll have different price points. They've got different margins and different infrastructures they can support, so they can undercut us from a pricing standpoint. When we go against the $10 million plus deals on a daily basis, now we're bumping up against the large CROs. We can't beat them from a scale and a broad of services standpoint. So if we stick to our bread and butter at the $500,000 to $10 million range, we found we actually win those greater than 50% of the time. I mean, it's a really great win rate for us. We go in, we can win them. And I think what's changed in the industry today a bit for us is when you think of the perception from a client standpoint, the marketplace has already kind of sat back and said, you're a smaller CRO, you can't run our $30, $40, $50 million deal. So if we go out and try to win them, we're going to lose most of the time. I think we win those 10% of the time. We win them, they're great. Most of the time they come from clients who already know us and know that we can handle that. You know, the challenge is though, when you think today, if you're a biotech company, a small pharma, even a large pharma company, if you've got this $5 million trial that you need to have run, here's where using your size and advantage works out for us. Do you want to give that $5 million trial that's really important to you to a large CRO that's got $4 billion of revenue or $2 billion of revenue and they're out chasing $100 million, $200 million strategic deals? Where do you think their focus is going to be? Is their focus going to be on your $5 million trial? Or are they going to make sure that they're keeping Pfizer's $200 million contract in place? The right thing for them to do is to focus on the $200 million Pfizer contract. This isn't to say that we're better than they are or they are better than us. It really just comes down to a little bit of market perception. If you've got a $5 million trial, you might feel a little bit more comfortable giving it to a smaller CRO because you know when you pick up the phone and call the CEO or the CFO or executive management, they're going to answer and they're going to work on it right away because it's a big piece of our business. It's not a big piece of the other guy's business. We're really playing in 2 different areas right now. So how did this work out for us when we started focusing on the smaller trials, or the mid-sized trials? Our number of awards actually went down 28%. Now, it looks like bad news, right? The actual number of awards received. However, our overall value of awards went up by 46%, and the reason for that is we were focusing in the right spot. We stopped playing around in that $0 to $500,000 space and focused in the areas that make sense. So our average award value went up 100% from 2010 to 2013. It takes just as much time to write a proposal, to get a contract, to sign an MSA, and to send an invoice for a $100,000 award as it does to do a $1 million or a $2 million award. So not only focusing in the right spot increased our award value, it actually made it a more efficient process inside our organization. We've got less people running around with their heads cut off trying to get MSA signed for a $100,000 piece of business that might not repeat in the future. So it's worked out well for us. When we take a look at, as we try to think about our differentiation strategy, do the large CROs today really differentiate? So I went through and take a look at some of their taglines that I saw on the web. Large CRO 1 is the world's largest and most comprehensive drug company. They've got 12,000 employees in 60 countries, so they're big. Second, they apply the breadth and depth of service offerings along with extensive therapeutics, scientific, analytics. Again, it's a bit generic. They just talk about the services that they're providing. Large CRO 3 is a global provider of best-in-class clinical, commercial, consulting services. And large number 4 talks about how big they are again, 10,000 plus employees in 80 countries. They're all great CROs. If you take a look at the resumes of CRAs in our business, half of them have probably worked for the large CROs. If you look at the resumes from and our guys have probably worked for them. It's pretty much a transient industry. You have CRAs probably change jobs. I think it's every 5 years. You've got a lot of cross-pollination. You've seen a lot of acquisitions. The big guys are buying the smaller guys, so they're joining their organizations. I think it's just we're playing in different ball games today. The large CROs are pretty much differentiating themselves from the smaller CROs because they're bigger and they're going after strategic deals. We've seen it impact the stock market just in the last couple of weeks with the Pfizer-AZ discussions. Icon and I think it's Parexel's stock prices have dropped just because of that, because there's this fear that they're going to lose their revenue bases when the deal gets together. Just as much as maybe the large CROs aren't differentiating themselves that much, mid-sized CROs, we can't be everything to everybody. We can't go out with that same market pitch. We have to differentiate. So in 2011, when we spun out the business, we took a look at our investment opportunities on a go-forward basis. We came up with 6 of them. One was, do we want to enter the Japan marketplace, reinforce our medical device business unit, buy a new clinical trial management system for efficiency, do an acquisition for scale to maybe bump ourselves up there a little bit, reinforce our clinical analytics business unit, or build, acquire a clinical supplies business in North America. We have a $4 million clinical supplies business in Europe that's really profitable, but it's not that core to our overall business, but we did entertain the ideas of making a little more global and getting a North America presence. We looked at all these opportunities and tried to break them out into different categories. What was the risk level, low, medium, high? What's the return time period on it, long, medium, short? Was it a company's strength today, and would it be a differentiator for us? It's really important. I mean, we're looking for the right risk-reward mix and differentiation strategies as we build our business out into the future. We chose entering Japan, reinforcing medical device, and reinforcing clinical analytics. They were the 3 that gave us a differentiation strategy against our peers out there. I'll walk through how they worked out. So the Japan investment, we put $450,000 a year into that opportunity. Sales, we did about $3 million of sales in 2012. We lost money in 2011 and 2012. This was a failure for us. This one did not work out. $700,000 loss over 2 years. I think we underestimated the challenge of entering the Japan marketplace. It's a different marketplace. It's a bit of an insular marketplace. We thought we could get in there. We couldn't. So we just eliminated the strategy in 2012. We just decided to move fast with that. Ironically, we've sold as much work in Japan selling out of China as we did having 2 years of people on the ground. The next one we looked at was medical device. $625,000 of annual investment a year for the past couple years. That was to build up a management infrastructure in that business so we could take off on it as its own business unit. Marketing to let everybody know that we're focusing on medical device. And training. Training is really important here. Pharmaceutical trials and medical device trials are different. If you're going to go out and tell the world that you can run medical device trials, you've got to have your staff trained in understanding how to run those trials. So we're spending at least $75,000 a year training our clinical staff to run those trials. This has been a win for us. From a backlog perspective, it's grown at a 44% CAGR. The revenue's grown at a 13% CAGR. So the additional revenue has driven about $1.5 million additional profit to our business, about 140% return on investment. And that 13% CAGR is really important because we saw that the CRO revenue in the industry is growing at an 8% CAGR. So if we have a business unit that's growing at 13%, we're now beginning to carve out a niche for ourselves and growing faster than the marketplace. The next area is clinical analytics, which is really the fastest growing piece of our business. We identified that early on. We put $7.2 million into the business over a 3-year total for compensation, IT investment, excluding software, and marketing the business. That investment excludes the additional headcount that we've had to add to actually perform the services. This was really to firm up the management infrastructure, add additional salespeople to the team. We also put another $1 million plus of software investment into the business. We've bought software packages such as SaaS CDI, Spotfire, Oracle Inform, so we'll be on the cutting edge and can provide those services to all of our clients. Sales have grown at a 39% CAGR, revenue 43% CAGR. I mean, this has been a big win for us. Again, this is the fastest growing piece of our business. $20 million 3-year gross profit increase, 144% return on investment, and a 43% CAGR. So we're growing that business unit 4 to 5 times faster than the marketplace. So we've made those investments. How's Theorem differentiated themselves? We talk about medical device. Go back to the mission and vision statement we had on the first page. The device expertise allows us to specialize within those complex combination trials. So if you've got a device that administers a drug or vice versa, we're specializing in that area. We've got the team skilled to give you the strategy for that and implement those trials. Really helps us there. And we're focusing on that device market. That's not a market that the large CROs are focusing on today. There's a lot of questions out there about what is the size of the CRO marketplace for the device companies. Hasn't really been quantified yet. They're not on the same curve as the pharmaceutical companies are with outsourcing. We think it's maybe about $1 billion today and growing, but we don't have good stats. But $1 billion marketplace for us, when the large CROs aren't playing there, it's really substantial. But we can just build share in that place. It helps us grow another piece of our business. On the clinical analytics side, we're the only mid-sized CRO with 50% of our staff skilled in clinical analytics. We're probably the only CRO with revenue greater than $100 million to have 50% of their staff skilled in clinical analytics. We now can provide services, a follow the sun strategy in Asia, North America, and Europe, and hopefully soon to be China. And we've got enough scale in that area. We can actually compete with the large CROs, but we can still provide that flexibility that a mid-sized CRO offers. And that's really enabled us to win in that area and shoot out. Instead of just having traditional pharmaceutical trials and trying to go head-to-head with the larger CROs, it's pharma helps support medical device, which helps support clinical analytics, and we can shoot off on all 3 areas. I talked about making tough decisions. When we spun the business out from Omnicare in 2011, Europe was a disaster for us. It was an absolute disaster. The business situation, we had a rapidly declining revenue base. Europe was in the midst of a recession. Too much cost in the infrastructure for our revenue base. Sales to revenue conversion time in our industry is 3 to 5 months, can sometimes be even longer. And a strengthening euro for us was not a positive. Most of our contracts are in USD, so our labor expenses obviously are non-USD in Europe. So if the euro is strengthening, our expenses go up while our revenue's not. What are our options? Well, there's really 2. We could absorb the losses and then try to sell out of the downturn. So the classic, we'll just keep trying to sell, we'll add more staff to the sales team and just try to sell. That's a bit of a passive strategy, and that's an uncertain outcome, especially when you're in a region that's in the midst of a recession. You're also going to get a large cash burn until you turn it around. We didn't feel we could be that passive with it. We needed to make decisions fast because we wanted to make investments in other areas. So we reduced the cost base and restructured the region. We knew we were going to take a short-term cash hit. We knew to have a morale issue in the region in the short term. We wanted to minimize the cash burn and wanted to reinvest in the future. I think Michael's presentation yesterday about Siemens, when you think about it, they're a very large organization. They realized they needed to do something fast. We don't have the resources of a Siemens. We're much smaller. So it was really important for us to do something quickly. When we think about Europe in 2011 and how it looked for us, you can see revenue was dropping rapidly from Q1 to Q4, and the margin, whenever I say this in a presentation with our investors, our gross margin in Europe was 4% in 2011. Gross margin was 4%. So EBITDA had brackets around it. So it was not a pretty picture there. So we took $3 million out in Q4. We implemented the restructuring plan. You start to see those costs come out in 2012. Revenue starts to stabilize. It gets to a flatline level. Margin starts to get up to around 30%. CRO gross margin should be around 40%. So we got it from 4 up to 30, stabilized the revenue. And in 2013, the market starts to come back. Theorem strategy begins to take hold. And we see our margins get back up to that 40% range. And we've seen 34% growth since 2011. So really quickly addressing problem areas, it limits your financial exposure. We don't get to that finished result if we don't invest the money in clinical analytics and medical device in order to grow the broader business. Talent acquisition and development. We have a challenge of being a smaller player. We cannot outcompensate the big CROs. It's just not going to happen. So developing our talent internally is really essential for us. How do we do that? We try to have a lot of executive access. That's a benefit of being a smaller organization. We have a complete open door policy. If we have an employee who wants to have a conversation with the CEO, the CFO, whoever it is, it's easy to get access. We have an informal mentoring policy, and we're looking to implement a formal mentoring policy of partnering high potential individuals in the company with executives in the business. Breadth and depth of roles. We really try to put high potential individuals on a lot of cross-functional projects so they can gain a diverse skill set and push themselves further along the ladder. Reward and recognition. I think we hear about this all the time in all of our businesses. I'm sure everybody here has a great program for this. But we continuously communicate how our employees add value. We're in the nice situation is we're helping advance science and helping push across drugs that help people. So when we hear from our clients that somebody's done a great job, we communicate it. It's a really nice feeling to be an employee knowing that you've helped advance science and possibly help millions of people around the world. Last, we try to embrace an innovative culture, as we all do here. Developing drugs is an innovative industry. But innovation doesn't have to mean technology. It can be a new process. It can be a new way of thinking. We try to tell everybody that if you're waiting for the CFO to come up with a new novel way to run a clinical trial, you'll be waiting a long time. Most of the innovation is going to come from people within the organization who are actually doing the work and servicing the clients. So we want to have a culture. If you have an idea, please bring it to the table. We'll take a look at it and implement it, and you can go run with it. So an area that we've had to develop our own talent was really in the sales area, using an example. So hiring experienced account directors can be a very expensive and risky proposition. So hiring salespeople. Account directors with successful track records at the large CROs, they can make $500,000 to $1 million. You think about the sales opportunities they're chasing, $100 million strategic deals, $30, $40 million deals. We don't have the volume to pay at that level. We just can't. They're not going to bring in those types of deals, so we can't pay at that top quartile. Many times experienced account directors who are leaving the large CROs, they're probably not doing so well. So do you really want to pick up somebody who's not that successful and bring them into your organization that's completely different? You can't come in and chase $30 million deals with us. You have to go out there and chase those $2, $3, $4, $5 million deals. But they still have high base comps. They want to still make the same level salary they were making before. You could be bringing in an underperformer at the highest level in your organization and you get nothing out of it. We've seen that. Sometimes you want to go outside the industry and get good account directors who you think are going to be really good, have been successful, but they don't have any contacts in the space. It could take them 6 to 9 months just to gain traction. It could take them greater than a year to actually make a sale. We can't afford to bring people in and not bring in any business for over a year. So what did we do? We came up with what we call the Account Development Representative Program. We use ADR because it's much shorter, but that's to bring in inexperienced, high potential talent and quote unquote theoremize them. So what's an ADR? They come in, they've got inside sales responsibilities. They cold call potential clients, they coordinate capabilities meetings, they can do all the administrative work so the salespeople are client focused. They do a lot of research, they study client pipelines and identify high potential opportunities for us where a client's pipeline match with our therapeutic expertise. And then we train them. We get them educated on all things Theorem. They understand Theorem's core competencies, and we get them prepared to advance to an outside sales position. So we made the investment in Q4 of 2012. Cost us a little bit less than $250,000 annually. We hired 4 individuals, 2 to 3 years right out of college. They had sales and marketing jobs. They wanted to get in the pharmaceutical industry. So we hired the most eager beavers we could get our hands on. We brought them in. 2 of them got promoted to account manager level just after 6 months. They sold $20 million worth of business from June 2013 to March 2014. That's about $8 million of gross margin for the company. $20 million of sales for a $238,000 investment. I don't think we thought it would be that successful. We were really shocked. One of the ADRs is one of our top salespeople in 2014, amazingly. So we're just going to do it again. We hired 5 more in 2014, and we, fingers crossed, that 2 to 3 more of them turned into account managers. One of the things that we found was quite interesting. You hire an experienced salesperson. Maybe they've never had success at AstraZeneca. They never want to call AstraZeneca. They've already blocked it out in their minds. They're not going to sell to me. We're not going to go there. They don't have this. The ADRs really didn't have that mentality. They're just eager to go in. They're going to call and call and call until they can get their way in. There's no roadblocks for them, which has been really fascinating. So it's been a really successful program for us. And lastly, I talked about providing exceptional service. You have to have this in any industry. So we really judge ourselves on our service. We do questionnaires with our customers. How are we doing? I think, but it's also judged by how often they're giving us repeat business. So from 2012 to 13, our repeat business was greater than our overall 2012 awards. So our customers are coming back to us. You couple that with new customers, and our overall sales are up 30% for the entire business from 13 to 12. So, it's common sense, but good customer service is a requirement regardless of whatever size you're in. A good product is a requirement if you're a product company. That's what you're in business for. So how's it all worked out for Theorem at the end, where we sit right now? We've been able to really differentiate the portfolio and spread our revenue and backlog over the 3 different business units. So pharmaceutics, the blue colors there, they're about 50% of our business. Device and clinical analytics is about 50% today. So the differentiation strategy is really working. Same thing from a revenue perspective. It looks the same. We've been able to grow the pharmaceutical business. We've been able to grow the device and clinical analytics business and spread out across the marketplace. It allows a smaller player such as us to grab share in areas that the large CROs aren't playing in. So I decided to take a look back at what the articles are for mid-sized CROs. Just last month, there was an article in Outsourcing Pharma, mid-sized CROs see uptick in clinical trial wins. Small, mid-sized CROs still have a role in industry consolidation, lucky for us. Sized out of big deals, mid-tier CROs are still thriving, finding market niches and strategies to stay vital. Mid-sized CROs perform as good or better than larger ones, survey says. New research shows small, mid-sized CROs inspire greater customer loyalty. Now look at this one, follow the money. Theorem, MedPace, Aptiv Solutions, and Chilton International, they all had private equity investment in the last 36 months. I think private equity firms do a pretty good job of putting their money in investments that they think are safe and growing. We know that Aptiv Solutions was doing a nice job and they just got acquired by Icon. Recommended reading. Many of you have probably read Malcolm Gladwell's books. He's got The Tipping Point, Blink, and Outliers. Came out with David and Goliath last year. It's a book, it's got a lot of interesting stories about how the underdog or the perceived underdog had the ability to go out and topple a bigger competitor. We handed this out to our management team at the beginning of the year because we still want them to continue to think differently. We don't want them to go to battle against the larger competitors and trying to do things the same way because it will just result in failure for us. So I thought it was a pretty interesting book, pretty much on par with all of his other books. And that's it. I'd like to open up to any questions that you may have.
Besides the private equity investments, have you seen a lot of people coming around with proposing merger acquisition activity?
It's interesting. We've had 5 or 6 companies look to buy Theorem. 3 weeks after we spun out, we were getting phone calls to buy Theorem because of the history that the business has and its global footprint. Up to this point, we've kind of said no. We've got great owners and audit partners. They were really looking at a long-term plan, and I think they saw the value in the business if we could grow it out. So we haven't looked from that standpoint. From the other side of things, we've been public stating that we would be interested in doing an acquisition to increase skill sets in particular areas, maybe get some skill sets in some countries that we don't have there. I've probably taken a look at about 10 to 12 businesses in the past year. Haven't found anything that's the right mix and the right price standpoint. Prices are up really high right now. And you're spending a lot for something that you just for the point of doing a deal doesn't make sense right now. So we're on the lookout. We'll see.
Hey, Jason, you talked about talent retention as a challenge. I think in the international markets, are you facing more of a challenge in your division?
Yeah, it's a great question. Europe, not so much. We don't see it in Europe. Even during the downturn, even when we were restructuring, people did not leave. That we didn't see that there. In Asia, you get it. We've got about 100 people in China. Turnover there it vacillates a bit. It's about 20 to 30% here and there. It almost goes in a wave. Somebody who was influential in the group goes to another CRO, they take 5 of them with them, and we have to refill them. India hasn't been so bad, quite frankly. We've got about 350 people in Bangalore, India, doing data management and clinical analytics. We bump up against Cognizant and Quintiles the most over there for talent based where we're at. It's been pretty good. We'll get some of them, once they get to a certain level, they'll move over to the other organizations. We've done a really nice job of what we call as a refresher program. We bring in classes of 50 folks who come right out of school, don't put them on clients just quite yet, train them up, people leave, we move them over, and then they support the growth. So having a constant strategy out there, what you call a recruiting machine, we definitely have to have in India. Yep. Any other questions? Okay, great. Thanks for the time.